Okay, we are up to, we're skipping right now to Siman Kuf, Tov, Kuf, Chof. Okay? This is L'chabed habayis kedino k'Shabbos, kach dina b'yontif. That you're allowed to sweep the house on Yontif like Shabbos. The subject which we are learning tonight at large is very similar to the subject which we learned in Hilchos Chalamoid, Tircha. There are many things that we learned in Chalamoid that even though there's no malacha problem, there's a Tircha problem. So we're learning about things that have to do with those kind of ideas. Next siman, Mashilim Peres derech Aruba. Okay, we can drop Peres and move them from one place to another through the chute. You know, an Aruba is
skylight?
Like a skylight, through a chute. B'yom Tov, v'lo yishal shalom b'chalonos, v'lo yoridem b'solamois, v'lo yitaltelem migag legag, af al pi shem shavim. You can't take them from one roof to another, even though that they're equal in height, that it's not like a special kind of tircha aspect, but the fact that you're going from one place to another, that is the problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sheish al peres al gag, v'ro geshamim misham shurubam. You see that the rain is coming. V'after sheyavu they hefsid. So hitiru loy chachamim litroich b'yom tov laridam l'bayis derech haruba. Chazal allowed you on Yontif to bring them in and put them under cover. Ayidei chevel oy lashlicham dekivon she'ein bezet torach kol kach hitiru lo mipnei hefsid memoinoi ava b'loy hefsid loy. They allowed you to do this because they were concerned for your financial loss. But if it wouldn't be for your financial loss, it's forbidden. And what malacha are you doing? No malacha. So why is it forbidden? Tircha. Okay? This is a very important idea. Aruba hu chalon ha'osi b'tikra sagag. It's a skylight. Also, laridam derech sham b'chevel deika tircha yiserim la'loisam ala chaloin. We'll read them. If it's not a chute, you have to somehow get it into a window. That's already, we call that too much tircha, and we don't allow it. If you just want to raise them so you could throw them into the window, to raise them, that's called a tircha, where you just have to drop them into the chute. That is okay. If the chalon is on ground level, if you don't have to lift them off the ground, then you're allowed to do it. You cannot transport them in any way that movement has tircha to it. To move in your roof, there's no chute, but in the next roof there is. So you just want to walk to the next guy's chute and drop the peres down, even though it's a flat surface and the one's higher than the other. But being that it's a different person's domain, that's enough that we call it a tircha, and it's forbidden to be done. Okay. No. The isser is tircha. We allowed it when we see a very minimal amount of tircha. And once it's going into somebody else's rishus, we see that's like a natural thing that we see that as a tircha to go to somebody else's rishus. Yes. Okay. You're allowed to cover, if you have wine or bricks or peres, you're allowed to cover them with some kind of a tarp on Yontif, so that they shouldn't get ruined in the rain. Liten kli tachas hadlaf, dino kashabes, kach dino b'yom tov. The same halacha which applies on Shabbos applies on Yom Tov also. I would like to share with you a halacha which I saw today, a fascinating halacha. In Hilchos Muksa, there's a halacha of mevatel kli mehechonai. Mevatel kli mehechonai means that you're not allowed to take a kli and put it out of service. And that's also either mishum bainer or it's also mishum seiser, but it's some kind of a muksa related issue that you're not allowed to be mevatel kli mehechonai. From the biggest problems that I face with mevatel kli mehechonai is a subject which many people have this problem. Many of them are not aware of it. In this neighborhood, many people have air conditioners, and the air conditioner has to have a place for the water to drain from. There's in the bottom of the compressor of the air conditioner unit, there's a pan, and that pan has a wall to it, and in that wall there's a hose, and that hose takes the water and dumps it someplace. Where does it dump it? There are many different possibilities. Right. People have those white pipes hanging from all kinds of places, going to all kinds of things. I'll just share with you a issue that I had here in my apartment. I came once to my apartment, in Beit Shemesh, and the person who was fixing the air conditioner, he put it into the filling tank of my bathroom. In other words, the toilet has this. Okay, that's what you have to say. Okay, put it into that thing, and those tanks come with two holes. One side is for where the water comes into it, and the other one is if you want to have the water on the other side. But they both come with two. Right. So he took the one that was not in use, and he put it in there. And this is a absolutely fantastic idea. Why? Why is it a fantastic idea? Because when inside your tank in your toilet, there's a tube that goes up to the water level, and when it overfills, it falls into the toilet, and it will never overfill. And this way, it drains itself with absolutely no problem. This is an absolutely great idea, except for observing Jews. What's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is that water is muksa. Okay? The water for goes to Mazgan, according to Kamat, all places is muksa. Why? Because it was.
It's a byproduct. You use the words, open your tank and take it. No, the tank's already full.
What's that? You're already attacking what you didn't hear. Okay? Okay. Now the halacha is a person is not allowed to use muksa water. I am using that water to flush my toilet.
Even though the tank is already full. It's not
right. And and not only that, this is we're going to learn like Kol Tarakula right now. The halacha is two halachas that are almost a steer to each other, and they're both exactly correct. If I have something that's iser, and it's noilad b'taruvis of heter, then it's batul automatically. Okay? That's l'chatchila. Now, if I have iser that is muksa, and it's batul beroiv or b'shishim or whatever, it's still not batul. Why? Because since when Shabbos ends or Yom Tov ends, it will become mutter. It's called davar sheish lo matirin. And the water from your air conditioner, when it comes Matzah Shabbos, it's davar sheish lo matirin. So if the water would be created in the pan, then it would be 100% permissible. But the water is not created in the pan, it's created on the bars above, and then it drips down, and it's not batul, and therefore all the water in your tank you cannot use it to flush a toilet. That one drop can pass the whole toilet. Okay? Because Sto Sheish L'Matir is not butter. No, we're not up to Kli Mechal. Okay. So I had them, when I came there after I saw this, I had them move the pipe from there to drip into my sink. Right? And in my sink it goes down the drain. I have the same advantage. It's maybe not as pretty, but it takes care of the halachic shayla. Okay. All this is based on the hanocha that the water from your air conditioner is muksa. Now, many times, and I've seen this many times, people, for some reason, the pipe, even if the pipe goes to a kosher place, I'm not right now discussing where the pipe is going to, somehow next to the air conditioner, the pipe gets loose, and they have in the middle of their salon, they have the air conditioner is dripping. So what do? They take a bucket, and they put a bucket underneath, and the bucket collects that water. Now we have two problems. First of all, if that water is muksa, so it becomes mevatel kli mechonoi, and you have a problem that you're not allowed to do that. The next problem is that what do people do when this happens? They wait for the bucket to be 9/10 full, and then they go and they empty it out in the bathtub, and they put it back, right? Now you have a problem that you're not being metal to muksa.
We just said you're allowed to put it on the delef. So delef is not muksa?
Delef, we're going to learn about that in a minute. Okay? Now, we are allowed to put, what we say about delaf, you're allowed to put a cover on it so that the delaf doesn't ruin the thing. We didn't speak about moving the water of the delaf. Yeah, and it's going to, okay, so that depends on what kind of water it is. There's a halacha in Shin Lamed Vav discusses, Shin Lamed Zayin discusses that. Okay, according to some, that helps. Today, I saw a shtickle Torah written by, I think, by Rabbi Rubin, where he is mater to empty out the bucket. And I've seen, over the years, I've seen many people write shtickle Torah to, what? Right. Because, there's a whole shtickle Torah about what is the more important thing and what are you doing it for, and there's a yesoid in mevatel kli mechonoi, which I'll just share with you, which is from the Sfas Emes. There's an isser of mevatel kli mechonoi, but there's no isser of mevatel kli lechonoi. If that's what it's supposed to be doing, then that's not called mevatel kli. According to some, there could be, again, this has a Sfas Emes, which is worthwhile pursuing if you're learning Shabbos, the third parak, you can see the Sfas Emes. And I'm just saying that I saw a piece today where he is mater you to be metaltal the stuff to move it. Most places, what? No, I do not accept it. I'm just saying that a lot of times I enjoy a piece that somebody writes, and there are pieces of it which I will probably use or reuse, in a different place. But I think that's a fascinating idea. What? That has to do with this idea. If this is what it's supposed to be for, so then that's not called, yes. Yeah, okay. Now, okay. Okay, I'm going to answer that question. Are you allowed to set up a situation that that's what you're going to do? Okay, so then you shouldn't have your pipe going into this. I didn't discuss that. I'm talking about what people are supposed to be doing. Okay. Now we're going to go on to the next Siman, and again, we're following the same subject matter of tircha. I would like to start off by telling you that I appreciate that I'm not speaking to Amaratzim. I assume everybody here knows that you're allowed to carry on Yom Tov. Right? Right, if you have some kind of use for it. We are right now going to learn halacha which flies in the face of that piece of information. And it's still going to be true. In 5 minutes, we'll be happy. Okay? Ein hasuma yoitze b'maklei. A blind person cannot use his red and white stick on Yom Tov. Okay? V'loi haroya b'tarmiloi. And a shepherd cannot take out his backpack, I guess. I don't know what you call it exactly. Okay? V'din cheger dina b'yom tov k'mo b'Shabbos. And a person who is impaired, he has the same halacha on Shabbos. Now let's see. Why in the world can't the Suma use his stick? Now, I'm going to want to impress upon you, you're allowed to carry on Yom Tov if it's a Tzarech Yom Tov. So what's the issue? How could we have halacha which is against the very basic halacha? So that's how we have a Mishnah Berurah to help us take care of these issues. Okay? Why are you not allowed to do this? This is called inappropriate behavior. That's true. Right. I would like to share with you I met somebody on Shabbos not long ago, and he was walking with, I call them ski things, but the hikers. The first time I was introduced to this is I was on a tiyul in the south someplace, like very close to the border of Israel on the bottom, and I met a guy who I call a masmid. He was doing Shvil Yisrael. He's doing it for 4 months. He was by the end. And I asked him a question which the answer was a very big machaya for me. I said, you're going to be doing, let's say, 30 kilometers today, right? What are you drinking? Right? Right, that's like a good question to ask. We're in the middle of a desert. The only food which I saw was a carcass of an animal that was eaten by the ravens, okay? And the only thing that was there was bones that a skeleton would call old, okay? There's nothing there. So I asked him, what are you going to be drinking? So he says, water. I said, where are you going to get water from? So he said to me, before I went on this trip, I went through all of Israel and I buried water in strategic points. So for my whole trip, I will have water. Okay? Now that's called a masmid, right? Okay? So, what? Yeah, okay. So I'm telling you, when somebody tells me, I came to Seder and I fell asleep, so I say, why didn't you plan in advance, right? This is a very important piece of mussar that I learned from this guy who spent 4 months of his life doing absolutely nothing. Okay? But it was all worth it just for me to get that lesson. Okay? Yeah, okay, but I'm just saying, anybody wants to do Shul Yisrael, I'm not interested in joining you, okay? Okay, but this is, and I met somebody over here with those sticks, walking, and I asked him, why do you use them? He said, on Shabbos. I met someone on Shabbos using them, and I said, why do you use them? And he said, it makes it easier for me to balance myself. Not that he can't do it without it. That's exactly the person that we're speaking about over here. Now it happens to be that here we have an Eruv, and it's only a problem if a person is taking it into a place where he can't carry, then we say that that's not called a Tzarech Yom Tov. But just like you're allowed to use them in your house, you're allowed to use them in Eruv also. That's not, in other words, I don't have a halachic problem with that person, but he rang a halachic bell in my mind. that if this would be Yontif and would be in a place that there was no Erev, it would be also for him to do that. It would also do it on Shabbos also. And I'm just going to make a statement about, I don't think there were, okay, I'm going to make a statement that is very important. Many times I get asked about people using a stick, a walking stick, a cane on Shabbos, and rarely am I ever mater a person to do it. Why? Because it has to be that he can't get around without them. Most of the people that I know that use a stick when they're at home, when they're, they can get around without them. And therefore, it's not, there's no heter for them to do it as far as carrying is concerned. But a person who has, let's just use the mushal of crutches or something like that, that you can't get around without it, that's a different story. Okay.
Is the victim wants to know if Michel wants to know is the risk of falling off was a factor at all?
I don't think so. In other words, the question over here is, can you go without it or not? Now,
this is only without an error.
Right. If there's an error, there's no problem anyways. But if when you say, if somebody tells me, an older person that wants to take a cane because he's afraid he's going to fall down, right? So I would say, do you really think that you may fall down? And they say yes. I'll say probably should stay home, right? You shouldn't go with a cane either. In other words, okay, so this is a question, can he get around without it or not? And I'm going to use the mushal, a person who has a false leg. So sometimes it's permissible to wear it on Shabbos, if it's used like a leg, sometimes not, and it also depends on how much you can get around without it. So all of these questions, when I'm asked such a question, it takes me about 5 minutes to get the question, before I can give an answer. Yeah, but the chiddush over here of Yontif is that even though it's mutter to be metaltal, but you're not allowed to do it because it's inappropriate behavior for Yontif. I don't know if it makes any difference. Okay, the next sif that we're going to see is going to touch on your question. Okay, in the olden days, if there was a prominent person, they would carry him on a chair in Rosh Hashanah to go from one place to the other. And the question is, if you have a prominent person, are you allowed to carry him around on the chair so that he doesn't have to mix with the riffraff, his clothing doesn't have to get dirty, all of these things which are paying attention to the honor of that person, are you allowed to do that or not? You're not allowed to go with such a kind of a chair, whether a man or a woman. And if the person is going to give a shear, then it's mutter. And if you're doing it al kotef, we'll see the Mishnah what that means, then you're allowed to do it. And a important person that would take out on a chair. This kind of chair, they would carry it on their shoulders. So people shouldn't push him, or that his clothing shouldn't get dirty. Because this is also, these are tircha kind of inyanim, and when it's done in the way that it looks like a tzarchei chol, then it's not allowed. If it's a person shoy rabin tzrichim loy, lebeis medrash ledrasha, then mutter afilu yochol elech baraglov, even though the person can actually walk. Then definitely allowed to take the Talmud Chacham to the shear in the chair. Al kotef mutter pirish afilo al kosef shemesim kol echad yod al kosef chameir v'akise shadam yeshalav alzer sehem. They make a chain of locking arms, and then they put the chair on top of that. That is a kol shekei nosim akise ben yedayim. Then it will be mutter. Okay, because that's not the way that you normally do it. Okay, mishin is kavtzu. A person who can't walk, he's allowed to go out with a stick because then he needs it. Okay? You're not allowed to lead your animal with a stick to teach him how to go. Okay.
What was wrong with this person?
The muscles are short and he cannot stretch his legs properly to walk properly. Yes. Okay.
What's the difference between this chair and the ladder go?
That one's the way you do it, one's not the way that you do it. That's all. One's the whole, one's not.
With the king, the guy needed to go with the king, so he can't go with
If a person can't go without it, then you're allowed to. If you're allowed on Shabbos, you're definitely allowed to on Yom Tov. Okay. Okay. The next siman is basically the same thing as Hilchos Shabbos. That you're allowed, the things that you're not allowed to do, all kinds of din and dancing and singing, all those things. The only thing that's fascinating over here is Sif Beis. Shchiv Meirah. A Shchiv Meirah is a person that is on his deathbed. Shori Legaresh Afilu B'Shabbos. This was in the olden times a very common problem. They were afraid of a lady falling to Yibum. And therefore, they would give their wife a get so that she wouldn't fall to Yibum. If a person is about to die and he has a get written already, and the only problem is he hasn't given it, you're allowed to execute the get on Shabbos in order so that his wife should not fall to Yibum. That's a important halacha. That's like din. They'll do anything which has to do with din. Okay. Now, the next halacha is very important because this is where quasi-halacha is king. There are certain things that we live with the stira. I come to you, I knock on your door Shabbos evening after the meal, and I say, I have guests, and I need sugar for my tea. Can you please give me some sugar? And we all know what I meant was, could you lend me sugar? Right? Well, not everybody's a nice guy like you. My neighbors would expect me to pay them back. Right? Now, I took the sugar, and I didn't pay him back. So my neighbor wants to take me to Bezdin. I took a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
Okay. And he wants to extract from me the money that it cost for the sugar that he gave me. Can he extract from me that money? What actually happened? Okay. But what was the lashon that I used? So what actually happened? Okay, you understand the question? Right. So now we're going to learn the halacha.
Why is this specific?
Because in Chol, when you want to borrow something, you say, I want to borrow some sugar. Right. Let's see. We'll see the Mishnah Berurah will take care of all these questions. But these are fascinating halachas, and they're only here. Okay? Hava Yom Tov nitna l'tavea bedin. A hava that was done on Yom Tov, you're allowed to take him to Bezdin to get back your lousy quarter of a cup of sugar. Okay? Ayil Shimon Sin Zayin Sif Yud Aleph. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu shehikif lo chevbeni minei maichol b'mishnah. The store gave it to him like on credit. Nitna l'tvar, etzoyim sheniskakin loy bezdin achar Yom Tov, imesar l'froy. If the guy doesn't want to pay up, you can sue him. V'rabusu mishum The ikaman diyama b'gemar, the silei the bedin eno yochol l'tvoya, ela beino ben atzmoi. Timhoya nitin l'tvoya, osi l'michtov. If you could, the halacha is that if you're going to be able to demand payment, that it becomes something that is actually executed financially, and those kind of things, there's a chash that you may write them down. So it becomes like a chayv. A kamashulon, hacha di ikaman yamar de im lo yochol litvoya lo yiten lo mitchila v'yimna mezeh simchas yantif, and therefore you're allowed to do it, even though that you can collect it. Okay. Okay, next halacha. Gaboy tzedakah, goyvim me'achatzeres b'yom tov. They can go around collecting their tzedakah on Yom Tov. Avlo yachrizo b'derech shebachrizim b'chol. They don't announce that they're collecting the way that they do it b'chol. Elo goyvim b'tzinu v'nois l'tor cheikom. They do it in a more quiet fashion. U'mechalke l'chol shchuna l'shchuna b'fnei atzmai. And they give it out. Says the Mishnah Berurah, right? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu mine meichol Mishnah, lo yachrizu, after mutalo hachriz al dvar mitzvah, even though we said that you're allowed to say out loud that you're making collections for a dvar mitzvah, shani hacha de efshe betzina. When do we say that you're allowed to do that? When you don't have an option. But here you have the option of doing a betzina, so we curtail the heter and we say you can't do it unless you do it betzina. Okay, that's a fascinating halacha. That's like opposed to selling the aliyahs. Okay, I'm going to do a smattering of the next siman. This next siman is not very exciting for most people. It's about somebody who dies on Yom Tov, Yom Tov Rishon, Yom Tov Sheni, and what you're allowed to do for him. Okay? So I'm just going to share with you these halachas. These are what I call halachas that rabbis have to know, and lay people don't usually have to know, because when it happens, they're not willing to answer the question. Right? The rabbi... No. There's maybe a Rosh Hashanah. Okay, Meis Hamuto Lekovroi. If you have somebody who died and he has to be buried, Imu Yontif Rishon Lo Yisaska Bo Yisrael Afilu Yarsiach. You're not allowed to have a Jew handle the corpse, even if the corpse is going to smell. V'yavshar ba'amimim. I was asking about amimim, but you can have goyim take care of him. Afilu Meis Bo Bayom. Now I'm going to share with you a story. My father, when he was about somewhere between 17 and 19, he was in very close connection with a Rav who was a very strong personal friend of the Chazon Ish. And my father had a very strong kasher to this Rav. He was a Rav in Richmond, Virginia. And my father spent a lot of time in Richmond, Virginia. For all those who know where that is, it's at the end of the world left. And then you go some few hundred miles and you get there. And somebody died on Yom Tov Sheni, where you're allowed to bury him. And he was in a fight with the community. And the Chevra Kadisha said, we're not burying him. Okay? Yeah. And my father was sitting learning with the Rav on Yom Tov when this happened. And the Rav said, okay. So the people from the Chevra Kadisha were very, he just, you're just like, okay, you're not burying him. So they asked the Rav, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to have the Schwarzes bury him. Okay? Now, this is in the South. I don't know if you people know what the South is, but the South doesn't mean like anything lower than Metula. The South means the South of the United States, and they are not very sympathetic to blacks over there. And they said, you're going to do what? He said, we're going to have the Schwarzes bury him. They said, no, we'll bury him. Okay? So then they walked out, and my father asked the Rav what just happened. So the Rav said to my father, it's a mefurish halacha. Yis'askebo avim. And it doesn't make any difference in Shulchan Aruch between white and black goyim, right? As far as Shulchan Aruch is concerned, a black goy and a white goy are equal. Okay? So you can have the Schwarzes bury him. But to a person who lives in the south, a white goy and a black goy are two totally different brias. They're not, it's not lower level, it's two totally different brias. And that's how that situation was, taken care of. I think sometimes a rabbi has to have, a dose of common sense to know how to deal with the issues. Okay. You should have the guy bury him. But those things that he mentioned, those can be done by a Jew. They should be done by a Jew. And when they do the Taira, they have to be careful that they do it on a surface that they're not going to have a schita problem. Right? This is a, right, okay? This is a very important halacha, and I'll just say that, there are certain halachas that you only know if you live with the halachas. I was with my father once on a trip. We were out of town, and we came back into Detroit, and my father said I has to make a stop beforehand, and he went to the place where they make the tairas. And the shaila which he got was that the person who died had bed sores, and the question was how to do the taira that the bed sores should not leak blood. And this was, my father was on the phone, there was a very big conversation, and you have to know exactly what to do in these cases. These are halachas which the layman, myself included, I have absolutely no idea. I'm aware of the subject, but how and what is what to know what to do in these cases, you have to have experience in that area. And my father was on the road with a very important Rav for about 20 minutes till they came to the conclusion of what to do. Okay. Meis b'Yom Tov Rishon, Osir la'alina ad Yom Sheni. He died on the first day Yom Tov, bury him immediately. Kedei shelo yis'aska bo Yisrael. Don't wait till tomorrow in order that Jews should take care of him. In other words, better do it on the first days and have the Schwarzes do it than wait for tomorrow and have the Jews do it. Okay? This is a halacha. And I'll just share with you, since we have a Muncie guy here, there was a major question in Muncie about 20 years ago. Rabbi Weissman was very involved in it. I remember it was his wife that died. Somebody died on Yom Tov, and the question was they were sending the mace to Eretz Yisrael, and the question was about sending it on Yom Tov or not. Now I'm going to share with you, these are halachas, again, these are halachas which, you're not going to hear this now, you're not bumping into this again. There's a halacha of bury ayidei goyim. Rav Moshe Feinstein says that halacha is not negeh nowadays, that we have refrigeration. We could take the mace, put him in the refrigerator, and wait to bury him. And the Zoyin HaMace is not so great because he doesn't disintegrate like he does in the open air. And the halachas change from what it says in Shulchan Aruch. And you're not allowed to do certain things, even ayidei goyim, because we can wait. There are many poskim who disagree with Rav Moshe on this psak. What? I'm aware of that.
No, that's
Rav Moshe knows that too, right? Right? So there's a question of which halacha overrides which halacha. And there's a very big machlokes on that issue. And because of that, that person actually was sent on Yontif. There was a very big pulmus of Rabbonim. I remember what happened at the end. They had a final conclusion. The Shabbos of Yom Kippurim lo yisaskebo klal alfiyah de amim. Shabbos in Yom Kippur, you don't bury the person even with Goyim. Va'afilu lo yitzia al yedehem lanicho bachuf bachvira asuya me'esmo. Even if you have a grave already prepared, and you just lie him into the grave, which is the way that they buried in Kuchen, they just put him into the grave, that should not be done. I'll just share with you a fascinating halacha. We do not open a grave for somebody before the person dies. And we don't leave graves open overnight. These are Kabbalistic things. We don't get involved. I just tell you a case. I have a Mechutin, a cousin of a Mechutin of mine, who's a Chassidish Rebbe. And his father and mother died and had to be buried in the cemetery in Sanhedria. Now, the minig, I didn't say halacha, the minig is that you don't bury men next to ladies, unless it's a husband and wife or a father and a daughter, unless it's some kind of special relation, unless there's some kind of a mechitza leid. They came to bury this person, and it was buried, the kever was open next to somebody of the wrong gender. And the chassidim, this is no problem. They got a hold of some shovels and they started digging a new grave. That's all. This is no messing around. And the Chevra Kadisha came, and there was a war, right? There was a war right there at 12:30 at night about where the person should be buried, because you can't bury wherever you want. Yeah, you can't do that. Now, in the Moshe Feinstein has many chuvas about this. If they sold a grave to a person next to a lady, can you move it? There's a mechirachal or not? I'm just telling you, these are halachas and minhagim which are very strongly followed by people who are aware of them. And they're saying the people who aren't aware have absolutely no idea that there's any problem at all. Okay, we'll stop over here.